I think Philadelphia Eagles first-round pick, Jihaad Campbell, is a clear and obvious favorite to win Rookie of the Year in 2025. I'll tell you why coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Wednesday edition of the show. I'm your host, Louie DiBiase. Thanks for joining us Monday through Friday right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are brought to you today by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 back in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Jihaad Campbell is a player that excites me so much heading into his rookie season. He is a kind of player that the Philadelphia Eagles defense has maybe, I don't want to say they've never had this kind of guy, but a Swiss Army knife from hell. Somebody described him as when the Eagles traded up for him in the first round, and I can't stop thinking about that way to label him, because that is exactly what he's going to be. This inside-outside pass rushing specialist that can also play in coverage against the run as a stand-up inside linebacker. He can blitz through the A-gap. You can move him to the edge. It's this linebacker pass rushing tweener the Eagles have not had in quite some time. Like, they've had versatile, quote-unquote, Swiss Army knives in the secondary, like Malcolm Jenkins and Cooper DeJean. I even think C.J. Gardner-Johnson, to a degree, was that kind of player. You know, slot corners, safeties, box dime linebackers. Like, Malcolm Jenkins was that kind of do-it-all player. But they've never had a Jihaad Campbell type. And I think Jihaad Campbell, even with the injury he has right now, he might not be practicing until mid-August is the timetable that Vic Fangio placed on the rookie. Nick Sirianni yesterday didn't place any timetable on him, but we know Vic Fangio is pretty blunt and honest, so I would guess he knows that it's more towards like mid-August than, you know, I would say at the start of training camp in July. Regardless of that fact, if Jihaad Campbell is back by week 1, or maybe he finally starts to really become a big part of the defense like Cooper DeJean was a month into the year, as long as he doesn't miss a large chunk of the 2025 season for any reason, I think Jihaad Campbell will be an obvious Defensive Rookie of the Year favorite in 2025. Why do I say he's an obvious favorite? I think a rookie on defense that's starting for a Super Bowl champion is going to have a good chance to win Rookie of the Year. That was Quinyon Mitchell last year, Cooper DeJean. But Jihaad Campbell, I think, is an obvious favorite because he's exactly what voters look for in a Defensive Rookie of the Year finalist and a potential winner. Look, as much as I think Quinyon Mitchell deserved to win Defensive Rookie of the Year in 2024, he's not really the type of candidate that ends up winning it. A shutdown cornerback like Quinyon Mitchell, I mean, he's a finalist for the award, but he put up elite film, not elite box score stats. He didn't put up the interceptions that the voters wanted, and I don't think that's justified in him not winning the award, but that's kind of what they look for. I think he deserved to win it, but what do the voters look for? They like flash. They like big plays, sacks, tackles, interceptions, because when you think about who's voting for these awards, a lot of them are beat reporters for teams where that's their sole focus. They're covering one team week after week. They're not watching every game across the league. And that's what frustrates me about the process, but that is the reality. So what do these guys do? They're not going back in the All-22 and watching every coverage snap of Quinyon Mitchell or Cooper DeJean against Cooper Kupp or Terry McLaurin or CeeDee Lamb. Like, they're not doing that. What are they doing? They're box score scouting. So that's why a lot of the times, pass rushers, inside linebackers, guys that put up loud box score stats. Again, they put up big-time highlights that they can find on YouTube. They put up sack totals, 100-plus tackles a year, interceptions. Those are the guys that end up winning the award, and that's why I think Jihaad Campbell could be a favorite if he does not miss a lot of time and if he does have a big role in this defense early on in the season, maybe even from the jump in week 1 with Nakobe Dean likely out for a little bit. Campbell's going to have the opportunity to make an impact in all of those ways the voters look for. Not only is he going to start off as an inside linebacker that can rack up tackles, that's going to drop back in coverage, that could get interceptions and force fumbles and fumble recoveries. He can be in on turnovers. he's also going to be a guy that's going to blitz. They're going to use him on the edge at times, especially if, like, Jalix Hunt isn't taking a big step in year 2, and Joshua Uche looks like the guy last year was a healthy scratch for Kansas City, and Azeez Ojulari is banged up. If they have inconsistent play on the edge, like, Campbell's going to play there as well. So he's going to have chances to sack the quarterback. I think he's going to be this roaming player across the formation that can blitz, that can spy the quarterback. I think that's something they're going to use him as well in this year, is spying mobile quarterbacks because of his range, his speed, his length, his tackling ability. He's going to be able to do everything. He's going to be able to get his hat in the game in so many different facets, and that's why I think the voters are going to like Jihaad Campbell if he stays healthy, and if he ends up being a good player. I just think that's exactly the kind of player that wins this award. I actually looked it up. The last 15 Defensive Rookie of the Years over the last 15 years, 12 have been either inside linebackers or pass rushers, whether it's an inside linebacker getting sacks, or it's, a defensive tackle getting sacks, or an edge rusher. Regardless of the fact, that's what they like. Players that impact the quarterback, guys like Luke Kuechly that won the award, that get 100+ tackles and 3 interceptions and 3 sacks. That's what they want. Only 3 cornerbacks have won the award in the last 15 years. The other 12 have either been edge rushers, defensive tackles, or inside linebackers. So Jihaad Campbell, I think right now, FanDuel says he has the 7th highest odds for Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think his odds should be higher than that. I would hammer that bet right now. The guys ahead of Jihaad Campbell right now for Defensive Rookie of the Year, Abdul Carter is the favorite. Then it's Falcons first-round pick Jalen Walker. Then we have Travis Hunter at number 3. Mason Graham is at number 4. Mikael Williams at number 5. And then Mike Green at number 6. I think that Campbell should at least be top 5 in Rookie of the Year odds. Like, I would take Campbell over. I wouldn't take him ahead of Carter. I would put him ahead of probably number 2 and 3, Jalen Walker and Travis Hunter. I think James Pierce is going to be the better player on the Atlanta Falcons defensive line. I think those two might kind of cancel each other out for Defensive Rookie of the Year if they're both good, kind of like Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean did in 2024. So I'd put him ahead of Jalen Walker. I put him ahead of Travis Hunter too, because as much as this committee is definitely going to want the first ever unanimous Rookie of the Year on offense and defense in the history of football, they want that story to play out for Travis Hunter. I don't think he's going to play enough snaps on defense this year unless the guy has like 4 picks or 3+ interceptions and he's a star at wide receiver. Unless that happens, I don't think Travis Hunter is a serious candidate for the award. So I would take Campbell over Walker, over Hunter, probably even Mason Graham. It's crazy, but I actually think that 3 of the top 4 players, when it comes to FanDuel's odds for Defensive Rookie of the Year, I would take Campbell ahead of them. I would not take him ahead of Abdul Carter. I kind of like Mike Green ahead of him as well, and Mikael Williams. I think those guys have a chance to put up double-digit sacks this year. But I like Campbell's odds. Right now, it's plus 1,800 or plus 1,500 on FanDuel. 7th best odds to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. I'm hammering that. Because like I said, if they use him the way they want to this year, if he can be on that Zach Baun-like trajectory of a player that just impacts the game in so many different ways with tackles, forced fumbles, interceptions, sacks, if he is the stud that the Eagles moved up for in the first round, that is just what normally wins Rookie of the Year. So I think Jihaad Campbell could be a favorite, and the Eagles have come close to this award the last few years. I thought Jalen Carter had a great chance a couple years ago. Same with Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean last year. They haven't quite gotten it done, but I do think Campbell has a really good shot in 2025. I'm so excited to see how the Eagles use him this year as a rookie. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, there's another player I'm very interested to see how the Eagles use him on defense. It's Joshua Uche. I don't think we're talking about Uche's role enough in 2025. I'll tell you why coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing. The finals right now. Game 3 is tonight. Pacers, Thunder in Indiana. The series is all tied up at 1-1 every night in the NBA playoffs this year has delivered highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot like Halliburton's in Game 1 or a breakout player doing some incredible things on the court. There's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and to win big. I think I'm going to take the Pacers money line. Game 3 tonight. Indiana, the vibes are going to be electric. I know at least I'm going to take Halliburton's over on points 4 after a quiet Game 2. I think he's going to bounce back in Indiana today for Game 3. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 back in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So Joshua Uche is a very interesting player on the Eagles defense. Somebody that I don't think we're really talking about enough when it comes to his potential role and his potential impact on the 2025 defense. So, like I've said in the show before, I think this is the most boom or bust edge group that Howie Roseman has probably ever put together in his time as the Philadelphia Eagles general manager. Like, he normally likes proven veterans at this spot, or like top tier first round picks that have a very high floor. Normally he doesn't go for a high ceiling, low floor type of group at such an important spot. Like, he wants to know that he's getting elite, consistent production out of his edge group year after year. But I do think he made the right call this year going with this approach of seeing if Nolan Smith can build off of that year 2 breakout, seeing if Jalen Hunt can have a similar year 2 breakout. I like that he's seeing through those draft investments of early top 3 round picks that have shown progress, clear the way for those guys to be the future, the long-term core pieces on the edge. Then he brought in some risky signings. Azeez Ojulari is a guy that gets hurt pretty consistently. Joshua Uche, who I want to talk about today, was a healthy scratch down the stretch for the Kansas City Chiefs, including the Super Bowl. He was kind of their version of Bryce Huff, a former elite pass rusher, at least for a season or two, that fell out of favor. And so the Eagles went with a riskier approach at the edge this year. Joshua Uche, I think we're all kind of banking on Hunt to be a better player, have a bigger role this year, and even Azeez Ojulari, because when Ojulari is playing, you can bank on him getting like 5 to 8 sacks a year. Like, that's a solid role player that I think Eagles fans and media alike are assuming is going to have a more prominent role in this rotation than Joshua Uche. And while that may be true, I think Uche, is the least sure thing of this group between him, Smith, Hunt, and Ojulari. I also do think he might have one of the highest ceilings. Like, I think Uche is a player that could have a much bigger role, a much bigger impact on this rotation than we think. Lane Johnson actually mentioned him specifically by name yesterday when talking about what pass rushers have stood out to him during OTAs, and he said Uche was even a guy that gave him trouble that he's always noticed on tape back to his New England Patriots days. Like, I really don't think we're focusing on him enough when discussing replacing Josh Sweat's production and Brandon Graham's production over the last few years, and Milton Williams even on the inside. That's a lot of sacks. That's a lot of pass rush win rate. That's a lot of pressures that are going out the door. And so, yeah, you hope Nolan Smith replaces it, and Jalen Hunt and Moro Ojoma and Jordan Davis taking another step this year, and Azeez Ojulari. But Uche, again, a risky player, not sure what you're going to get out of him, but he has a high ceiling. He had the best year of any of these edge rushers, maybe outside of Nolan Smith's 2024 season, but statistically, Joshua Uche is the only one of these 4 that has put together a double-digit sack season. He had 11.5 in 2022. So, yeah, that was 3 seasons ago, but this is a former second-round pick that's still young, that has legit speed off the line of scrimmage, has really good bend. One-on-one, like, sometimes he sets up tackles, and I'm like, wow, like, that was a really impressive pass rush move. If they learn from the lesson of Bryce Huff and put Uche just in a position to succeed off his strengths, if they don't ask him to do too much, and he's just a pass rushing specialist in obvious passing situations as that 3rd or 4th guy in this rotation, like Bryce Huff should have been last year, And I think Uche will be used that way because he's not a $17 million a year player that's expected to take another step and be an every down star, to be the alpha of this group like Bryce Huff was last year. So I think they're going to be more willing to use Uche like they probably should have used Huff to begin with right away. And if that is the case, and that's how they use him, and they let him just put his hand in the dirt, let him line up on the edge and just pin his ears back and go get the quarterback. I think he also projects better in this defense than Huff because with New England, he lined up more in a three-point stance, also with his hands up, like a stand-up outside linebacker that also dropped back into coverage, that helped against the run in that way, that really set the edge. I think he fits better in this scheme as well. If they use him in the right way, I do think you can get maybe not 11.5 sacks out of him like the Patriots did in 2022, but I do think you could get closer to that player than the guy that you've seen the last 2 years that's fallen out of favor in both New England and Kansas City, where I think both of those teams expected him to do more, kind of like the Eagles expected Bryce Huff to do more last year. Whereas I think the Eagles' expectations for Uche will be a lot different, and therefore I think he'll be properly used. And therefore, I think he could be like a really good piece to this puzzle. Again, I think between him, Smith, Hunt, and Ojulari, if I had to guess that one guy just really doesn't make an impact and maybe even gets cut, or he just is not a big part of the rotation, and Vic Fangio ends up using 3 guys, not 4, like who is the one that didn't step up? I probably would say it is Uche. But if you told me there's a player not named Nolan Smith that had double-digit sacks this year, who would I say that is? I think it's between Uche and Hunt. Like, if you told me it was Uche, I wouldn't be surprised at all. So I think he's a very interesting player. And the Eagles kind of need him to step up because if he doesn't, they could be thin in this edge rotation. Like, they need Ojulari or Uche, one of the two, to step up this year and replace not Josh Sweat's snaps in production. I think they're banking on Jalix Hunt being that guy, but they need to at least be who Brandon Graham has been over the last couple years, right? Like they need to be at least a solid third guy in the rotation because I do think Jalix Hunt, who by the way is turning heads at OTAs so far this offseason, I do think he's going to be the one that takes over for Josh Sweat, but they want to have more than 2 guys in this rotation. So Uche, Ojulari, they need to step up. If not, Howie Roseman's going to look outside the building. As I said on the show last week, there are some interesting names in the free agent pool right now for pass rushers like Matthew Judon and Jadeveon Clowney and Von Miller. There's a Darius Smith. Like, they're not going to do it, I don't think, but TJ Watt could be on the trade block. Trey Hendrickson. So Uche and Ojulari, they have a big opportunity, and Jalix Hunt, to have a big role on this defense. But if they don't get it done early on in training camp, if you told me by the end of July, early August, before the preseason, or even after that first preseason game, if they brought somebody in, I wouldn't be surprised. But I am very intrigued by Uche. I actually think he has more promise than people are talking about, and I think he could have a bigger role this year than we're talking about. Ojulari has the higher floor. He's the more proven player, so that's why he's being talked about more. Hunt and Smith are supposed to be the future. That's why they're talked about more. But don't sleep on Uche. Like, I do think there's a scenario where he ends up being a pretty solid role player this year for the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, I'm not saying he's going to be the 2022 Uche, but this isn't just some random guy that they brought in that we kind of remember from the draft, like Terrace Marshall Jr. or Danny Gray at receiver, or, they brought in, who was it last year, like Julian Aquara or Terrell Lewis that we remember from the Alabama days. And those were like top 3-round picks, but they quickly fell out of favor. Uche is a former second-round pick from only a few years ago in that 2020 draft class that's had a double-digit sack season, that still has some talent and is still young. So he's very intriguing. I'm going to be watching him closely in training camp and the preseason. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Speaking of training camp and the preseason, heading into that time of the year, the Eagles get a little bit of a break right now until July training camp. Right now, with the break hitting us, after OTAs, who are the leaders in the clubhouse for those open starting jobs the Eagles have on both sides of the ball? I'll get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Skylight Calendar. Say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight Calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. The sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders all in one easy-to-see place. I need this. I am a busy guy day after day, and I do not really schedule things out all that well. I got a million things to do all day to fit everything in, and I feel like this is something that I could really use. What would it mean for you to eliminate the I didn't know excuse from your family's routine? Could assigning everyone their own color finally solve the who does what confusion in your house? Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That's Skylight, SKYLIGHT CAL.com, skylightcal.com/NFL. All right, Eagles fans, we're wrapping up this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. Hey, by the way, make sure your second listen of the day after you listen to LOE is the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with Kyle Krabs, Joe Marino, some awesome stuff. It's all about NFL philosophies over at that podcast, talking about roster building, training camp battles, preseason, risers from the NFL draft, year 2 and year 3 breakouts. They've got it all for you over at NFL, Locked On NFL Scouting, so make sure you check that out as well on the Locked On Podcast Network. OTAs wrapped up yesterday for the Philadelphia Eagles, so players get a bit of a break right now before training camp. So with that being said, I decided that I want to take a look at who are the favorites at the end of OTAs to win the Eagles starting jobs that are wide open on both sides of the ball. So right guard, safety, cornerback, those three right now are the big three. And then I'd say linebacker as well with Jihaad Campbell and Jeremiah Trot, or I should say Nakobe Dean, sidelined with injuries. So who are those leaders right now after OTAs? I don't think OTAs really changed all that much. If anything, it kind of confirmed that the favorites are still the favorites. Like when you look at right guard, Tyler Steen, it's so obvious that he's clearly still the starting right guard favorite for the Eagles. Like he was the unquestioned first team right guard. Kenyon Green was not getting involved with first team snaps like Mekhi Becton was to a degree last year. You did not see any of the rookies getting in on the action with the first team. Miles Hinton, no. Cameron Williams, no. Drew Kendall, no. Trevor Keegan right now looks like he's cross-training at center, so he really hasn't been a big part of the battle yet. So right now, clearly it is still Tyler Steen, but there was something interesting that I took away from Nick Sirianni's press conference yesterday when he was asked about right guard compared to other positions. When he was asked about Tyler Steen he wasn't asked about Steen specifically, but about this battle compared to other players and other positions in a similar spot. Sirianni really didn't hype up Steen all that much. He really didn't even mention him by name. When talking about the right guard spot that's open for business, basically, whoever wants to start can take it. That was kind of the mentality that Sirianni alluded to. And he kind of just said when the pads go on in training camp, like, we'll see who wins it. So I don't feel like that was really a massive boost of confidence in Tyler Steen. And I feel like that's kind of been the tone that they've talked about him, or haven't, in a way, over the last couple of years. So I think, when you look at snaps and how Steen was unquestionably the first team right guard, that really bodes well for his chances to be the full-time guy this year. But I'm still believing the Eagles are going to be looking at the rookies, looking at Trevor Keegan's progress in year 2, looking at Kenyon Green. And I do think they're going to still have their mind open here at right guard. Like, yeah, Steen's fine. He's the guy right now. Unquestionably so, but I think they almost, like, again, I'll say it on this podcast over and over again until I see Steen starting week 1. I think they want someone else to go win it. I think they want one of those rookies to turn heads, or, I think they want Kenyon Green to meet that top 15 potential of that 2022 NFL draft when he was selected top 15 by the Houston Texans. I think Steen is their floor, their safe option, but I really do think they're still intrigued by other players here. So right now he's still the leader in the clubhouse. OTAs kind of confirm that, but I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, there's still a lot of time. You've got the preseason, you've got training camp for other players to get in on this battle. At safety, I know Sidney Brown, like Tyler Steen, was getting the majority of the first-team reps next to Reed Blankenship. He got more first-team reps than Drew Makuba, but I really do still think that Makuba is the leader in the clubhouse to start at safety from week 1. And even if he's not, I do think the Eagles are going to run a lot of dime to start the year, and when they do that, if they move DeJean around the formation, I think Makuba will end up playing in the slot, like as a nickel defensive back. So he's going to have a role. So will Sidney Brown. But I do think when it's all said and done by week 1, Makuba is going to be the guy. And I do think even right now, even with Sidney Brown getting those first-team reps in OTAs, Makuba is the favorite. This is just kind of how it works in the NFL with the Eagles and with Vic Fangio especially. Most rookies start off this way where they're not instantly thrown in as the number one guy. Like outside of, I think Quinyon Mitchell was kind of that to a degree last year, but like a top first round pick will be. But other guys have to kind of go out there and earn it early on in the early process of OTAs and training camp. So I think it's obvious that Sidney Brown, as Makuba learns the defense, was going to get the majority of first-team reps, but I do still think Makuba's the favorite. Even with that being said, I'm not wavering off that quite yet. We'll see what happens in camp, but right now I still think it's Makuba as the leader to start at safety next to Reed Blankenship. And then after a strong spring and summer so far, Keely Ringo is definitely ahead of Adoree Jackson. And I'm not going to lie, I thought about this today. I don't think Adoree Jackson really has any chance to start. I don't. Because if Keely Ringo doesn't work out, I think they go out and make a move, whether it's signing Jair Alexander. Like if Ringo struggles or if they don't believe in him, I don't think they're going to say right now it's Adoree Jackson. Like if Ringo is the guy and then maybe something happens in the regular season, then they could put Jackson in. But if Ringo doesn't earn the job this summer before the season starts, they're going to go out there and pursue Jair Alexander or a Rasul Douglas or Asante Samuel. Like that's the kind of move I think they'll make if it's not Ringo. I don't think Adoree Jackson is really all that good anymore. I think he's lost a step the last few years. He only started in 4 games last year. I just don't even know. I think it's more likely that Adoree Jackson is cut than he starts. So for me, in the secondary, Drew Makuba is still the favorite to start at safety. Keely Ringo is the favorite to start at cornerback opposite Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. And like I said on yesterday's show, I think Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is the clear favorite to start next to Zach Bond if Nakobe Dean and Jihaad Campbell aren't available right away. But if Campbell is, I think he's the starter next to Bond at inside linebacker. But Trotter Jr., he's been the guy over the last few weeks. Next to Bond or with Bond missing practice, he's pretty much been getting all the first-team reps. But Smael Mondon, the Georgia rookie, he got some first-team reps yesterday as well, so keep an eye out for him. Like if he turns heads in the preseason, I think Mondon could play as well. Again, he has a very interesting skill set. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Eagles. Thanks so much again for making us your first listen each and every day. Still got 2 more shows for you this week, so make sure you subscribe on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Thanks as always for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.